Good afternoon. I am Mercedes of Spanish Foundation SETMAR, and I would like to welcome all of you to the first webinar of the PrimeFish project, and thank you for sharing this half an hour with us. So, what is PrimeFish? PrimeFish is a research project focused on strengthening the competitiveness of the fisheries and aquaculture sectors in Europe. And how are we going to achieve this? Well, PrimeFish has been working since 2015 on the collection of data, the development of methods, and the analysis of the seafood sector. These analyses have been integrated in a software tool, and in fact, we are taking a glance at one of the 6 main features of this tool today. A little bit more about the webinar schedule that we are organizing. Now, this is the first presentation that we will have today. Will introduce us to the main methods and data of the research we have developed on how much the consumers are willing to pay for seafood products. And we will have with us one of its main authors, Davide Menocci, agri-food economist of the University of Parma. Afterwards, we will have a show how on the willingness to pay feature of the software tool with the developer Jorge Andrade from the company Sintesa. And as you may see your computers right now, we will have a complete program of webinars on the months of October, November, and December. So if you are interested on any of these webinars, please, registrations will be open progressively through our website, www.primefish.eu. Regarding a little bit on the logistic of these webinars, we will be having questions and answers. So please send us your questions through the window chat. There is a window on the right part of the screen. At the end of the webinar, after the 2 presentations, we will drive your questions to the presenters. So thank you very much for everything. And now I give the floor to Davide Menocci.
Thank you very much, Mercedes. I first introduce myself. I'm Davide Menozzi from the University of Parma. I'm an agricultural economist, and in this particular part of the project, I've been working in analyzing consumer choices and behavior. I don't see my presentation at the moment. Do I have to upload it, Mercedes?
Yes, please. If you prefer, we can make it from here, but it will be easier.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, so I will do it. Okay, I hope you can see it. As I said, I've been working in analyzing consumer choices and behavior, and in particular, the willingness to pay for innovative features of the products. So in this part, we have analyzed and evaluated fish attributes, and so how consumers reacted with different products carrying different attributes, different characteristics. And so we have included the presentation format, the origin, the production method, the nutritional and health claim, the sustainability, labeling, and of course the price as well. We have in this, as you will see, we have compared different product species, alternatives. So we have analyzed how consumers' preferences were different considering these 7 species, that is cod, herring, salmon, trout, sea bass, sea bream, and pangasius. And we have carried out this analysis in evaluating how these preferences were different in different countries. And we have considered 5 European countries, that is Italy, Germany, France, Spain, and the UK. So what we have done was to interview with a survey 500 individuals in every country. All of them were fish consumers, for a total number of 2,500 total respondents. We have developed a questionnaire including different items, including, for instance, consumers' attitudes towards fish characteristics, fish choice motives, frequency of consumption, and so on. And we have translated this questionnaire into 5 languages, of course, for every country we have investigated. So Italian, English, French, German, and Spanish. We have included in the questionnaire also a choice modeling that is an online experiment. In this experiment, consumers had to indicate their preference on a given set of products, of goods. When choosing one alternative product instead of another one, consumers were indicating their preference on a fish species, like cod, for instance, and on a combination of these characteristics that we call attributes. And then we used a mathematical model to estimate how each product attribute, including fish species, has contributed to, let's say, drive to influence consumers' choices. And at the end, we have, based on these estimations, we have also estimated the consumers' willingness to pay for every attribute in the experiment, and also the total willingness to pay for a given product with the selected attributes. The data were collected by a single marketing agency in June 2017. And these are the attributes that we have investigated. We have considered 5 different attributes: price, origin, presentation format, sustainability labeling, and nutritional and health claim. Each of them was, let's say, identified into 2 or 3 different levels. So, for instance, for price, we have an average market price for every species in every country, and then we have a plus and minus 30% price included. For origin, we included the farm-raised alternative and the wild-caught alternative. For the presentation format, we included the whole fish, the fillet, and the ready-to-cook, and sustainability labeling, and finally, the nutritional and health claim. So these attributes and levels were uniformly present across the 7 species, with only few exceptions. For instance, in the case of Pangasius, we only had the farmed alternative, whereas for herrings, we only had the wild-caught alternative. And for the, let's say, the presentation format, we have included a picture to make the life easier for respondents. So, for instance, we had a picture for the whole fish, for the fillet, and for the ready-to-cook alternative. In some cases, like for the ready-to-cook salmon, we had considered also different, let's say, habits, gastronomic habits in different countries. So the ready-to-cook alternative was different in some cases, considering these differences among consumers, let's say, everyday life. Okay, so in this picture, you can see the ready-to-cook salmon for France and for Germany that are quite different. At the end, every respondent had to answer a choice, what we call a choice set, with 8 alternatives. That is 7 product profiles, plus the possibility to not choose either of these products. So they could select one of these alternatives. As you can see, they are different in different aspects. Of course, the species are different, but also the characteristics of the products are different, considering the different levels we have included in the experiment. And also the prices are different. So consumers had to make an experimental choice in order to evaluate what kind of fish was better, of course, for them, for the utilities. Before the experiment, we have also provided some information to the consumers, in particular about the sustainability labeling and the nutritional and health claim. And these information are similar to those that consumers can find also on a package of a product, and they were for the sustainability attributes. They were quite relevant for both farmed and wild-caught alternatives. And for the health and nutritional claim, we have included the high content in omega-3 fatty acid and the health effects connected to heart and blood pressure, with the relative condition of use of these, let's say, claims. And these were, the information they could also highlight by, let's say, clicking on these strings on the experiment. So we have also applied a mathematical model, as I told you, and the hypothesis behind this model is that consumers want to maximize their utility. And the utility that a person gets from a product is made by the attributes that the product carries. And not only the attributes, but also the personal judgment of every person for a single attribute. So individuals will choose the product that maximizes his or her utility. So, for instance, if I give more importance to sustainability, it is more likely that I will choose the product that is carrying these particular attributes, whereas if I'm more interested in the health issue, I will probably more likely to choose the product with the health and nutritional claim. So what we want to estimate at the end of the day with this model, based on the choices of the respondents, is how people appreciate every single attribute for every single species, and what we call the Partsworth utilities, this beta coefficient that we wanted to estimate. And what we did with these beta coefficients was to estimate the consumer's willingness to pay, the willingness to pay for an attribute, for instance, sustainability labeling, is the price the price premium that consumers are willing to pay for obtaining that desired attribute. So the willingness to pay was calculated using this formula for every single attribute in the experiment and for every single species in all the countries that we have considered. So let's see some, let's say, highlights. This is the sample description of the 5 European countries that we have investigated. And the respondents, as you can see, there are in total 2,500, are representative of the national populations, considering age, gender, educational level, and/or geographical macro areas. These are the choice probability, and based on the choices made by the respondents. And as you can see, they are quite different in different countries. For instance, the choice probability of sea bream is higher in Italy and Spain, as well as the choice probability of sea bass, while the choice probability of cod is higher, for instance, in the UK, and the choice probability of salmon is pretty high in all the country, but is higher, let's say, in the UK, in France, and in Germany. The choice probability is lower for trout, for instance, and for pangasius in every country, but also for herring in some countries like Spain and Italy. And these are the beta coefficients. This is not, we don't want to go in detail now, but it's just to see that we have estimated these parameters for every species, for every country, and for every attribute analyzed. Based on these estimates, we could, let's say, estimate the consumer's willingness to pay. So this is an example for Italy and for sea bass. These are the beta coefficients. So what we call the consumer's appreciation for every single attribute in case of sea bass in Italy. And in order to calculate the willingness to pay, we have to apply this formula. So simply by dividing the beta coefficient, if we want to calculate, for instance, the willingness to pay for health and nutritional claim, we have to divide the beta coefficient for these attributes by the negative of the beta coefficient of price. And the result, so if you apply this formula, the result is the willingness to pay for obtaining these attributes, that is the health and nutritional claim, which is 1.38 euro per kilogram in the case of Seabus in Italy. And so by applying this formula, this simple formula to the attributes for the same product, again in Italy, we can obtain these estimates of willingness to pay, which is expressed in euro per kilogram. So this is the average price of the product derived on the market. And these are the values of the willingness to pay for the different alternatives, the different, let's say, attributes. So, for instance, what is the willingness to pay for having a wild-caught Seabus instead of a farm-raised Seabus? The willingness to pay is around 4 euro per kilogram. It means that consumers are willing to pay this amount of money to get a wild-caught alternative instead of a farm-raised one. Okay, so this process is, let's say, applied for all the attributes. A negative value, for instance, in this case, basically represents the fact that for this alternative, the ready-to-cook alternative is preferred than the other one. So consumers basically want a discount of around 40 cents of euro for getting a whole fish instead of a ready-to-cook one. In other words, the ready-to-cook alternative is preferred than the whole fish. And also in this case, the ready-to-cook alternative is preferred than the fillet for Seabus, again, in Italy. Okay, and these are the willingness to pay for having the sustainability labeling attributes, and this is the willingness to pay for having the health and nutritional claim. So, based on these estimates, we could, let's say, estimate a total willingness to pay for a given product profile. For instance, in this case, we have Seabus, ready to cook, farm raised with a sustainability labeling and with the health and nutritional claim. And this is the total willingness to pay for this product, which is obtained by summing up the marginal, let's say, willingness to pay for the single alternatives included in this, let's say, hypothesis. And the total willingness to pay for these products is around 14 euro per kilogram, which is higher by something like 20% compared to the base price. So this is what we did, and I want just to highlight that these are not real prices. These are because prices also consider not only consumers' demand but also producers' costs, for instance. So what we have estimated are essentially how much consumers are willing to pay for a given product with particular selected attributes. And this is basically what we did. And now you will see, let's say, an application of this tool in the decision support system.
Thank you very much, Davide. Now we will hear a show-how of the tool by Jorge Andrade of Syntesa.
Hello, everybody. I'm George, a developer for Syntesa, and I'll be demonstrating the DSS tool for you in a moment. I'm just going to start my screen share in a second. Just one second, I'm just setting up. There we go. Can everybody see my screen? I guess everybody can see. So I'll start. The PrimeFish DSS is a framework for translating the research done in the PrimeFish project into actual marketable.
It seems that there is a problem with the screen sharing, I think.
You cannot see my screen?
No.
Let's try this again. Just 1 second. I'm trying to figure out what the problem might be. Just 1 more second, please. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, I think it's starting.
Okay, that's fantastic. I'm glad it worked.
Thanks, George.
Okay. Sorry about that. So again, this is the DSS PrimeFish decision support system. So I'll be demonstrating a little bit how the willingness to pay tool was implemented and an idea of how it can add value to the industry. The DSS tool is comprised of the DSS framework is comprised of a different set of tools that will help you get information, and we have also alongside the DSS a wiki which will provide information about the research and the tools and how to use them. So very quickly, you can see here the login page for the DSS tools. At the moment, it's easy for you to register. You can just click here and register. If you do not have an account, you'll be redirected to a quick form where we ask some required information. And after you register, you will be immediately granted access to both the DSS and the wiki. If you already have your account, you can quickly log in by clicking the login button. So I'll log in with my account here. And after you log in, you'll be redirected to the homepage where you see the latest tweets by the PrimeFish project and its partners. And you also have some quick access to the wiki if you want to have a look at some of the information we uploaded there. Just a reminder, this is a prototype. We're still working on it, and some information is still pending upload. But you also have a link to the website of the project where you can know more about the entire project. Once you're familiarized with the tool, you can access the willingness to pay tool by either clicking the quick access icon here or the menu item at the top, and clicking by it, you'll be directed to the willingness to pay tool homepage. First of all, we have like a quick description of the tool and the research, and just a little bit of an introduction to the whole research that Davide just described to us. It's important to notice that we also have a link to the willingness to pay wiki page that if the user clicks, he will be straight redirected to the page. Both systems are connected, so you can see that I am logged in here as Jorge Andrade, and I also am logged in into the wiki automatically. So you can click on this link to go to the wiki page and have some more information about the tool. We also have a link to the presentation format of the different products that Davide mentioned. So for a quick reference, if the user doesn't know what this presentation format means, he can quickly go there and have a place to try to understand a little bit better based on his country and the species that he is looking to. After the user is familiarized with this, there are the product attributes, which are the input for the tool. We have a quick description of what sustainability labeling means, and also nutritional and the health claim as a product, so the user can understand better if his product qualifies to this or not. And then we have the simple inputs that you see here that Davide described, except for, of course, the price, the willingness to pay, which is what the tool will be providing. First of all, you can choose the market country. So we're going to choose Spain here, and you can choose a species. I'm going to go with salmon. And then I'm going to choose a wild product source. And for format, I'm going to choose fillet. And I'm going to say that my product has sustainability labeling and nutritional health claim. It's a very simple, very straightforward to use tool. Once you have selected and are happy with all your selections, you can run the tool and you should get the results. The first graph that we have here in the results page will be the willingness to pay variations for the selected choice. So we can see that we have the willingness to pay for salmon in Spain in euros. And the first bar that you see is going to be the base price for the species in euros, which is 12.87. And then you can see in the second column or bar, you're going to see the stack of different attributes that you chose and how each of them contributes or increases the willingness to pay for these products. Yeah. So we can see here that wild increases with 1.5 euro, which is 11.66% increase on the price. Same thing for the fillet, which is a bigger increase, and sustainability labeling and nutritional health claim are at the top. And at the end, the last bar, of course, is the total, which is the increasing price from the base price. You can see 191%.53%, which is the base price of 100% plus an increase in 91.53%. And the total price increase, or the willingness to pay for this species, would be 24.65. After you have the results, we have a quick explanation on how to interpret the results, just basically explaining this and how each of those results relate to each other. And at the end, you have the willingness to pay variations by attributes for salmon in Spain. So here is a chart on how each attribute or each possible choice on that input affects the product. So we can see that for salmon in Spain, if it's farmed, for farmed salmon, there is no willingness to pay variation. This is the base price, so it doesn't contribute with anything. So we can see here that wild caught salmon has a better evaluation by consumers. Ready to cook is the base price. We can see how the other formats, they contribute to an increase in price, and also the sustainability labeling. Followed by the willingness to pay variations by species for Spain. So basically, we show below the same variations or for the same attributes selected, but for different species. So we're looking at salmon in Spain here, and here we're gonna have the same attributes in Spain, but for different species. So you can see how other species are affected by the same attributes of your species. And at the end, we have the same willingness to pay variations by country for salmon. So not only showing anymore in Spain, but you can see how your product would be evaluated in different markets across Europe. Once the user is satisfied, he can always return to the home page and select different attributes and different species. And some species you're gonna see that the product source is blocked, as of course Davide mentioned. For herring, we only had the data for wild caught, and the same thing for trout, only for farmed. So you're gonna see some differences there. And you can also see like that some results may not create any variations in price. So here, for example, you saw that I selected Italy, trout in Italy, ready to cook without sustainability labeling or nutritional health claim. You can see that the willingness to pay is only the base price for this. And we can see the different attributes and how they affect price. And we can see that if you're talking about a trout and fillets, you have a devaluation in price for Italy. And you can see how this compares across all markets. So this is the willingness to pay too. You can also see in the results page that if you want, you can print the results or download the spreadsheets that with the prices that was created by Davide in his research. We have, of course, many different ideas for the tool and how can it be improved in the future, but I believe this is a conversation for another time. And I guess this is it. So back to you, Mercedes.
Thank you very much, Jorge. I don't know if any participant would like to address a question to our presenters. Okay, we see that Jose asked if it will be easy to make this kind of research with other species.
I don't know if this can be done easy or not. What you have to do if you want to, let's say, repeat the same analysis with other species is to, let's say, collect the data again with the other surveys in considering these new species, and reevaluate the model again. So it would take, of course, time and cost as well to implement the same analysis for other fish species. And nevertheless, once you have the new results, of course, they can be also implemented in a similar tool, in the same tool. I don't think it would be so difficult in this case if I will provide the developer with new data. The more difficult thing, of course, would be to collect the information, analyze the information again. Yeah.
If I may ask to Jorge as a developer for confirmation, would that be very difficult to implement the new data in the tool?
No, it would not. For more data, of course, it's just a matter of inserting, parsing this data, of course, and inserting to the database. As David said, I think the hardest work would be on his part, on the part of collecting the data and creating the new coefficients. And one idea, of course, is always that we can always incorporate the algorithm into the tool. At the moment, we're just using the results of the calculation. So Davide pre-calculated all the possibilities and we inserted this into the database. But for future expansions, of course, we could instead implement the algorithm itself and just update the coefficients for the calculation, which would not be so difficult in a commercial version of the tool.
Great, thank you very much. So we would like to confirm to all participants that you will be also receiving a follow-up email with a copy of David's presentation, and that you might have already in your email box the link to access to the Prime DSS tool. So if there is not any more questions, we would like to invite you to send any other question that you, or any other comment that you might have, to the email of contact of the registration. And thank you very much for your participation and interest in this webinar. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.